Hi, my name's Erin Collins and I work here at the Provisional Psychologist Hub. Today we're going to be talking about records management with a clear focus on the internship logbooks. Now, this is a short workshop, but it is a workshop that we want you to stop and start to actually set up your administration process for your logbooks. So if you are traveling and listening to this on your Bluetooth, or if you're just listening in the background while you're doing something else, maybe pause this webinar and come back to it. It is one that you want to take a little bit of time out of your schedule because you're going to be setting up the foundation of your administration processes for logbooks and progress reports. All right, so I'm going to start off by talking about the importance of records management before we get into the how-to and the step-by-step of actually doing this. Now, you may find yourself thinking about jumping this workshop so that you can learn about exactly what goes into your logbooks. But I will tell you that as someone who does take a lot of the calls from supervisees in internship programs around their concerns and questions about logbooks and how stressful it becomes, this is a really key workshop to making sure that you're managing your time effectively and your organizational control. So here's just some of the things that I hear about when I speak to supervisees. Chaos versus organization. So if your desk or your desktop has looked anything like either of the images that you're seeing below, then you might be in this boat. So essentially your desktop is exactly that. A lot of people don't actually relay what a desktop is when they're looking at their computer. It should actually look quite clean. Maybe 3 or 4 files in there that are leading you to other directories in your computer, but your desktop should look neat and tidy. So if you can imagine your physical desktop and how many things you keep on that, that should very much mirror what is on your computer. Okay, so we're going to talk about filing systems and setting up a filing system for your logbook shortly. When you do have a clean desktop, physical and electronic, you will find yourself feeling more organized and feeling more essentially calm when you're looking at what you're going to do to start your day. Time poor. We all use this phrase quite a bit. Now, I would argue because we are all balancing many different things, whether it's multiple roles and personal responsibilities, essentially we become time poor. Now, if we use our time more effectively, because we can't actually make more time, it's really about being efficient in our processes and systems to make use of our time in a more valuable way. So by doing this setup, it might take you an hour or 2 hours to get your records management process set up for your logbooks, but by spending that time in the early stages of your internship, later on when you're doing this on a weekly basis, you're going to save yourself quite a bit of time and a lot of headaches. Now, talking about tasks that are frequent in their capacity is really important to recognize because you want to make sure that you're not banking up your work and that you have a steady routine in place. Now, I'm a visual person, so I like to have things booked into my schedule if there's something that are routine. So you might be someone who likes to book something in at the end of the day or at the end of the week, depending on how your schedule flows. You might be someone working part-time and you want to book this in on your day off. Or you might be someone who likes to have clear boundaries and have these set up at the end of your workday and allowing time within those hours. It really depends on you and your own situation as to how you want to manage your steady routine, but I highly recommend that over having a bank up of work. If you are someone who's already partway through their internship and you're already in a situation where you have a bank up of work, I would recommend taking some time out to catch that up and then setting yourself up a routine so that you're not escalating yourself into a situation that you cannot control. Being reactive versus planning ahead. I sort of touched on this a minute ago when I said some people kind of want to get straight into things and understand how to complete their logbooks. That's great, except that that's actually being more reactive in your processes, which could actually cost you time, efficiency, and detail and accuracy. Things that are extremely important when it comes to your logbooks. Having tasks versus having systems. So essentially your day, your role, your life would be made up of an obscene number of different tasks. If you have a system to managing those tasks, then they will execute quite efficiently. If you're just managing those tasks as they come at you, then you may find yourself becoming slightly overwhelmed. And that's where it comes to working hard versus working smart. Now, if you are working smart, then you're using your time effectively, you're setting up systems and processes, you're planning ahead, you're monitoring your plans and making sure that they are being effective, and you're adjusting as you need to. By doing that, you might find yourself with a lot more time to have a coffee at the start of the day, to managing your caseload, managing your paperwork, managing your electronic systems and notes, and ultimately increasing your compliance in your job role, which also reduces your stress levels. So you can see the importance of records management is quite high, and we're going to focus just on logbooks as we look at planning ahead. All right, so the things that you need to arm yourself with. So we're going to be talking about clear and concise file names. When you're using documents that are shared between more than one person, like a logbook where you're going to be sharing it with your supervisor and with the board, you want to have clear and concise file names. Sometimes, particularly when you are filing things for yourself, a lot of the time you won't put your name in a filing name. But I would encourage someone who previously had a number of students, you get the same documents from different people. So it's important to have your name as the person who owns that document in the actual file name. So we're going to be doing that today. Having the status of your document in the file name. So if it's a document that changes in its control status, like signed, unsigned, complete, incomplete, in progress, those sorts of things are all statuses that you can use to describe a document that is in a working stage. So whenever someone says that they have a working document, it means that it can change over time. And there is a point sometimes where that working document becomes completed, and you can use a status to reflect that. We'll do that today with logbooks. If you have any documents that are time-bound, make sure that you're using that time in the file name, whether it be a week date or whether it be a month period. We're going to be using both of those today. Ease of access. I sort of touched on how often people's desktops can look quite messy, and a lot of people use their desktop screen on their computer or their laptop because they like to be able to access things in one click. Now, that's great. We usually say in IT that you should be able to access anything that you're looking for within a maximum of 3 clicks. So if you're doing any more than that, then often that's considered inefficient, depending, I guess, sometimes on the complexity of your role, but definitely for the internship, if you're clicking too many times, it's definitely not efficient. But I would encourage you to pick and choose what it is that you're putting on your desktop. So something like a logbook is something that I would be accessing weekly as an intern. Therefore, I would definitely have a shortcut to it on my desktop, and I do today. So I have a folder shortcut. And I stress folder because a lot of people would have all of their logbooks on their desktop. It's often not saved into the cloud, which can be a risk in losing your logbooks. And there's something you often cannot get back. But also because you want to keep everything for your internship controlled in one space. So by having just a shortcut to a cloud-based folder, then you're going to be able to access them efficiently while still being able to store them effectively. So efficiently and effectively, okay? Reducing double handling, something I'm quite passionate about, is making sure that you're not doing the same thing twice, whether that be because you've lost your logbooks and then you're needing to redo them, or if you have a very similar task that you're doing to logbooking that you could potentially do at the same time or within a similar program. So, if you are writing notes about your client, you could then de-identify and start making those same notes in your logbook straight after, so it's current and fresh in your mind. But you'll come up with a routine that works. For me, I'm going to focus today just on how to reduce double handling with looking for logbooks, downloading logbooks, saving logbooks. I often see supervisors or professional psychologists going to the ARCA website to re-download resources over and over and over again, where if you have the system set up that we're going to do today, you wouldn't need to do that. Consider the environment. Now, at the start of this workshop, I mentioned that this is a kinesthetic workshop or a workshop where we're actually going to be doing something. So we need to be in a space that's conducive to that. The same thing applies to logbooking. When you're logbooking, you need to make sure that you're in an environment that allows you the time and the space to complete it, that isn't going to be interrupted, and that you're going to be able to complete that task and move on. So do think about where you're writing these things. Some people like to, write these things as they occur, and you might use your iPad or something like that for that. You might be someone who likes to write everything in a handbook and then transfer that data over. Whatever it is, consider your best environment to achieve those results. Often when we are setting up systems and processes or planning, particularly when you're doing so at the commencement of an internship, you might find better ways or more effective ways of doing those tasks and those systems. So I would encourage you to monitor and adjust your processes as you progress, because you're going to learn and grow throughout your internship. That is what it's designed for. So if you are learning, growing, then make sure that you're adjusting. Otherwise, you could be using old processes that you are losing time again. It's sort of the same as if I still wanted to fax a letter versus sending an email. I need to learn, grow, adjust, and adapt. These are the things we need to arm ourselves with. We're going to actually get started. So we're going to be using an example. Now, the way that I show you how to do this today is not the only way that managing a logbook process can be achieved, but essentially listening to it, if you want to follow this exact process, great. Otherwise, just think about it and apply it to what you're thinking of doing and see if there's anything that you can pick up that you could learn from. Okay. All right. So I've sort of touched on cloud-based and shortcuts and things already, but you just need to consider where you're storing your records. We have had provisional psychologists who store their logbooks on their work computer, and that does make logical sense in terms of storing records where you're probably writing them. The challenge here is when you depart a job role, often you will be locked out of your systems, and if you haven't transferred those files, they can be lost. Okay? And we have seen this on a number of occasions. So we do encourage you to store your internship files in your own personal files rather than your work files. Making sure, of course, that we're only using internship files that are de-identified, which is essentially all of your internship files. So things like your case reports, observations, logbooks, these are things you can store and then share with your supervisor and then unshare. So if there's anything that's not de-identified, you want to make sure that's still stored on your work platform. And you want to make sure that everything that you're doing is in line with your workplace policies and procedures. But it's very important that you, as a provisional psychologist completing your internship, have one place that you store all your internship records. All right. So I've got a couple of links that I've given you to records management softwares or cloud-based softwares where you can store files. Now, pretty much most people these days will already have a software that they're storing records in. So you may choose to use that. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to use a really common one today, which is called Dropbox. Microsoft have SharePoint. There's a whole number of these things, but basically it's just storing your files in the cloud, but where it appears on your computer. By having it appear on your computer will just make it easier for you to upload and access documents, which is one of those things I mentioned about time efficiency, is just being able to access things efficiently. Otherwise, you may revert back to just storing things on your desktop. All right, so I've talked about de-identification of records, setting up a routine, scheduling the time. So logbooks are something that you need to do regularly. We hear that word a lot in the guidelines, is regularly. So you're looking at weekly, fortnightly, monthly. And you want to talk to your principal supervisor about the frequency of signing off and reviewing those records. You might have a principal supervisor who likes to review them at the beginning of every session. You might have someone who likes to do them on a monthly basis. So you just need to talk to your principal and come to a mutually agreed frequency that you get them signed off. that your logbook should be completed weekly. So you should be completing them on a weekly basis, but making sure that you're getting them signed off regularly. All right. So I mentioned we're going to use Dropbox, we're going to use some files today, and you definitely want to be using a calendar to set up a routine. All right.